Everyone experiences this moment. You're on a job site, and the contractor doesn't need to say a word, but he'll walk you past some shelving, through a side door, into an outbuilding that doubles as a storage and mechanical space. You can see the overhead door before he points at anything. You see the track running along the ceiling, and you see where the schedule has an air handler hung right in the same location. You know before he opens his mouth. The unit and the door track are supposed to share the same ceiling space, and now the supply duct, the return duct, the whole assembly, all of it has to move. And that's a serious miss. And it was sitting in a drawing set you'd looked at for months. Most people expect practice to hand them something eventually, a single moment where the fog lifts and you suddenly know how to do this job. That moment didn't happen in the mechanical room, and it doesn't happen anywhere else either. What happens is closer to what you felt standing there, a long accumulation of exposure catching up all at once. A moment that feels less like arrival and more like a gap finally getting exposed. Today is about what actually compounds, since there's no single moment where it clicks, and what that means for you where you are right now. You're listening to The Practice of Practice, a podcast for architects, designers, and emerging professionals navigating the gap between school and real work. We focus on the realities most people only learn through experience: workflow, judgment, responsibility, and time. It's not theory, it's practice. There's a habit that follows a lot of architects for years without them naming it. Some days, without meaning to, a mistake from early in your career surfaces, something a mentor caught before it went out the door, or something you only learned because it went wrong first and nobody was there to catch it for you. It functions as calibration, a running check against everything you're doing today. A different, louder story circulates informally around most offices too, in comments from senior staff or in the way certain people get talked about. Someone gets it. Someone turned a corner last year. Someone used to need everything explained, and somewhere along the way, they stopped needing that. If it's told that way, it sounds like an event, like a door someone walked through and came out the other side changed. If you're early in your career and you hear that story enough times, it does something specific to you. It gives you a target, the day you'll have that version of the same shift. It also gives you a way to measure yourself against the people ahead of you. By that measure, you're always behind because your version of the moment hasn't shown up yet. So you wait for it. You watch for the sign that you've arrived. Weeks pass without one. The read that most people land on is that something's wrong with their progress when the model they're using to judge it is actually what's wrong. Watching for the click does something specific to how you read your own days. Every day that doesn't feel different becomes evidence that you're stuck. Your current uncertainty gets measured against someone else's current confidence, with none of the years of repetition that got them there visible in the comparison. The absence of a dramatic event gets read as the absence of change. This has little to do with ability. It's a side effect of expecting practice to work like a switch: off, then on, confused, then not. Practice moves as slow accumulation instead. One exposure stacked on the last one piece of responsibility layered on top of the one before it, until enough of them have piled up that the difference becomes visible from the outside. From the inside, there's really no discrete point where it happened. There's only the stack growing without an announcement. That stack looks like this on a real project. The building had an outbuilding that functioned as both a storage and mechanical space. Equipment was scheduled to hang from the structure above, and one of those units, an air handler, sat directly over the location of an overhead door in its track. The design team missed it before it hit the field. You missed it, architect missed it, and so did the mechanical engineer who stamped the sheet the unit was scheduled on. The discovery happened on a site visit, right after a job meeting wrapped. The contractor didn't announce the problem, he just walked over to it, and by the time you got there, you have already seen it yourself. You didn't even need him to say anything. You went back to the drawings the same day. It was obvious the moment you knew where to look. Nothing subtle about it, nothing buried in a note somewhere. What actually stings is that a mistake existed on the job. It's that this one sat in plain view through the entire design phase, and neither of you saw it because you'd both spent months staring at the same drawing until certain conflicts stopped registering. Familiarity does that. It builds competence, and then it builds blind spots, often in the exact places you looked at the most. The real cause was likely deadline pressure. Both of you were moving fast enough for long enough that a check either of you would normally run got skipped without either of you noticing it got skipped. What happened next mattered as much as the miss itself. You owned it on the spot, right there in the mechanical room with the contractor standing in front of you. Some moments can't be talked out of. The only real move available is to take it and start solving. Nobody got defensive. There wasn't tension to work through. The room the equipment sat in was wide open, so that reconfiguring around the door became straightforward once you both stopped and looked at it together. The contractor formalized the fix as an RFI, and it came back with your response listed as the approved solution. That's one bad afternoon and one resolved conflict on its own. It's also the clearest version of the actual lesson. Don't let a deadline control your judgment, and don't let it talk you into skipping the quality control step you'd normally run without thinking twice. What turns it into part of a longer pattern is what it changed going forward. You didn't leave that mechanical room with a vague resolution to be more careful next time. You left with an actual practice. Before any set goes out to bid, before it goes to construction, you go back through it with fresh eyes. Fresh, meaning eyes that aren't still trusting your own earlier logic. You're specifically looking for the thing you don't expect to find in the places you feel most confident about. That habit now carries a running list attached to it. Every mistake you've made on a previous set gets checked for the next one as an actual scan rather than a formality, because you know exactly what it looks like right before it happens again. It extends past literal repeats too. You've learned to extrapolate from that one conflict to other versions of the same underlying problem. Any place where equipment, structure, and access converge, and nobody in the room has checked all three sets against each other at the same time. That principle shows up again months later on a different project. This time, someone else caught it. The project involved reconstructing bathrooms across about 15 classrooms to bring them up to ADA standards. The team has been working on the drawings for months. The read for most of the time was straightforward. There was about 8 feet of casework that needed to relocate to make enough room for the new bathroom layout. Everything else in that section of each classroom read as furniture, movable, outside of the architect's scope. That read came from 3D scans, photos, and field notes. All of it looked the same way. It was just a run of counter height storage sitting against the wall, surrounded by whatever the teachers had stacked up on. A new team member joined the project and went back through the building's original construction drawings, the as-built set rather than the scans and photos everyone else already looked at a dozen times. What everyone had been calling furniture was actually a countertop mounted to the wall. The scans in the photos couldn't show the connection because every one of them had storage piled on top of it, which often happens in renovation projects, hiding the one detail that would have given it away. Had that gone out to bid the way the team read it, the change order would have hit all 15 classrooms at once, removing or modifying a wall-mounted countertop instead of shifting movable furniture. Repeated across every bathroom in the project. This large cost, it was caught before it ever became one. Nobody on the team was careless. They'd looked at the same material for months, the same way you'd looked at the same drawings for months before the air handler. The read calcified because everyone was working from the same sources, checking each other against the same assumption instead of a different one. A set of eyes that hadn't been staring at it broke it open, going to a source nobody else had bothered to reopen. Responsibility does this over a course of a career. The possibility of a miss never disappears. Instead, You get a longer, more specific list of what to check for, built entirely out of what's already gone wrong once. Eventually, it teaches you to build that same redundancy into how a team works, not just how you work alone. The list never finishes itself either. Some of what's on it came from a mentor who caught something before it left your desk. Some of it you learned because nobody caught it and it went wrong in front of you. Both versions count equally. Most days, some piece of that list surfaces without being asked for. An old mistake, a mentor's correction, a lesson you paid for yourself. All of it still doing work years later. This is what compounding looks like from inside a career, instead of from the outside, looking at someone that's already further along. A slow accumulation of specific, uncomfortable, survivable moments, each one converted into a permanent check that now runs on its own, and eventually into a habit you build into the people around you too. If you're early in this and still watching for the day it clicks, sit with this instead. The people who look like they've arrived aren't running on some innate sense you don't have yet. They're running a longer list than you, built from more specific failures than you've had the chance to accumulate. Some of what's on their list, a mentor handed them before it cost anything. Some of it, though, they paid for the hard way, the same as you will. You're not behind them. You were never on their timeline. Their judgment doesn't arrive for you in a single day when some switch flips. What's coming, if you keep showing up for the work, is your own list, your own set of exposed gaps. Each one turned into something you check automatically and don't miss twice. Eventually, that list stops being just yours. It becomes something you build into how a whole project team looks at a set. A newer person's fresh eyes on old drawings catch what a team who has looked at the same scans for months no longer can. Stop waiting for the turn. Pay attention to the trajectory instead. There's no moment where it clicks. Practice builds through repetition, exposure, and accumulated responsibility. That's the frame for this whole season. Drift, coordination, clients, construction, expectations, and now this, the compounding underneath all of it. None of it was ever about finding the one skill that makes practice make sense. It was about building the list, project by project, gap by gap, until the work you're doing today looks nothing like the work you were doing a year ago, and you barely notice the difference happening. Keep showing up for it. The list is already longer than you think. The practice of architecture is not intuitive, but it is learnable. So don't worry. We'll keep building from here. This podcast only works if it gets passed along. Not because of me, but because the hardest parts of practice are usually learned in isolation. If this episode put words to something you've been struggling with, share it with someone earlier in practice, or leave a comment naming the moment that hit. I'm doing this because I remember how long it took to realize that I wasn't behind. I just wasn't being taught. Most of what feels like a personal failure in this profession is actually a shared pattern. The more we name those patterns, the faster we all get better. I'll see you in the next one.